Hi guys, this is Round the Table with Josh and Darragh, a conversational podcast from your two favourite idiots. That's Josh.
And that's Darragh.
This is an off-the-cuff conversation between two friends who don't take themselves very seriously.
And neither should you.
Oh, and we don't check our facts thoroughly.
And neither should you.
Hope you enjoy the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Got a notification as soon as we started.
Hey guys, how are we getting on?
Hello, hello.
Nice to be back.
Love it.
How are you getting on, Josh?
I'm not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Having a good wee week.
Yeah, man. So am I. It's been an interesting one.
Indeed.
I say that it hasn't really, but we've had a nice day so far, haven't we?
Had a lovely day. Went out.
We realised that the podcast, which has been very much a passion project.
Yeah.
It was becoming a bit formulated, wasn't it? We're so busy at the moment that it was almost just coming that I would come up to your flat on a Wednesday, we would record for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'd leave.
No, rightly so.
You were like, get out now, I'm done. But it's been nice kind of today. We went for a pint, went for some lunch. It's been good, yeah, to kind of reconnect as the couple that we are.
Rekindle our relationship.
Exactly, yeah. So we've got kind of a myriad of things to talk about today. Yep. I don't even know. I'd like to kind of get back to some of the more wild and crazy conversations we've had in the past. We've been having a really interesting conversation so far today as is.
Yeah.
I do like the formulated elements of it, but I do also like it when we go crazy off-piste.
Yeah.
There is something wonderfully chaotic about the very first podcast.
Yeah. Nah, definitely. It really resonates with me. I love listening back to it. It's good fun.
I think especially it's probably the most pure encapsulation of what it is like to eavesdrop on a conversation between the pair of us.
Yeah, just chaos.
Just barely organised chaos with terrible jokes thrown in.
Oh yes, can't forget the terrible jokes.
Do you want to maybe then just pick a starting point and then we'll just spin off, see what happens?
Thought we'd have a wee chat initially about the whole Harvey Weinstein thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
It is quite interesting because that's him being convicted. What's the name of the? Hold on.
What's the question? I might be able to answer it.
The name of the place that he's gone to.
We went to Rikers Island was where he was meant to be going. The jail.
Yeah. Okay.
Famed, really, really
violent place. Apparently.
Violent, but also quite just deadly. It had a lot of issues with. Actually, one of the articles that I was reading about, generally about what was going on with it. One of the kind of spin-off articles was about kind of the depravity in Rikers Island, and saying that I think the kind of state of New York and Manhattan Council, whatever the equivalent would be, they've actually have decided they're going to spend £6.2 billion renovating the whole Rikers Island prison complex. Do you know where it is in New York?
I don't actually know.
Have you ever played Grand Theft Auto?
Yes.
And this is probably the easiest way to describe it. Okay. You know, between the two rivers, there's the big bridge, and kind of the pillar of the bridge, there's like a...
Is that Manhattan Island and...
So there's like Manhattan Island and there's like Brooklyn on the other side.
Yeah.
And in the middle, on like GTA, you get to
the
this...
Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge. And in the middle, I think it's the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm not 100% sure.
I've been there, actually.
Yeah. Amazing. I've never been I don't know if I've been to Brooklyn, but I've been to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And underneath that, and you can go to it on GTA, and there is a prison on it in GTA. Mm-hmm. But that essentially is like 5 or 6 separate prisons. But there's issues with it because they had inmates dying because of the heat.
Shit, really?
Yeah, like it's really, really...
Inside their cells or out in the yard?
I think inside the cells. Okay. But this is the thing, and this is something you talked about before, his whole ploy of like coming to all the court cases with a Zimmer frame, kind of pretending to be this old, frail guy. Yeah. And he was meant to go to Rikers, but I think he got redirected to a hospital, Bellevue Hospital, I think it is, because he complained of chest pain. Yeah. But the main point is, I think, huge step and huge win for the Me Too movement.
Yeah, definitely.
Only issue being that he only really got done on like 2 counts.
2 out of 5 counts, yeah, I think it was. I think it was like predatory assault, predatory sexual assault, and
he didn't get the predatory sexual assault.
Or was it just the criminal sexual
assault? He got
assault?
rape and he got sexual assault.
Yeah.
but the one that he didn't get predatory sexual assault, and that's kind of the one that can put you away for a long time. But there's 11 women, I think, that are taking him to court in. Is that it there?
Yeah.
Have you got the fact sheet?
I took a screenshot of a CBSN.
We'll read it out for the listeners.
Yeah, so we got on count 1 of predatory sexual assault, he was not guilty. On count 2 of criminal sexual act, he was guilty. And then of count 3 of predatory sexual assault, not guilty. And then count 4, rape in the first degree, not guilty. But in count 5, which was rape in the third degree, he was guilty.
What is the difference between rape in the first and third degree? Do you know?
I'm not sure, actually. Give that
Maybe I'll just give it a quick Google here.
Yeah.
There
seem to be a lot of terms here.
The difference. Okay, here we go. The difference between first and third degree rape is forcible compulsion in the case of first degree rape, which is defined as the use of physical force or by a threat or express or implied, which places a person in fear or immediate death or physical injury to himself or herself.
Okay.
Actually, funnily enough, in the Google of what is the first versus third degree, it's come up with a bizarre article about the Weinstein verdict.
Well, it's everywhere right now.
Yeah. So when a person is in the guilty of rape in the third degree, when he or she engages in sexual intercourse with another person who is incapable of consent or without such person's consent. So, you know the way that if you're drunk, technically you can't give consent.
Yeah.
Then I imagine that if you had sex with someone and they were drunk, and then they later, when they kind of came round, were like, I didn't want to be in that situation, then that I think would be defined as rape in the third degree. But I think rape in the first degree is forcible.
Yeah.
The thing that's quite interesting, and I don't know if this is really playing devil's advocate here, the thing that's quite interesting about it is that what's coming out of the Weinstein camp seems to be predominantly that he believed it was consensual.
Yeah. Well, I guess if he spent so long doing it and never really facing any repercussions apart from, was it Brad Pitt, I think, beat him up or threatened to beat him up one time because he did something to Angelina? I think it was something to do with that.
I don't know. I haven't heard that story. It's quite interesting.
There hasn't been a lot of pushback, but I guess at that point, if you just, because I guess no one really is the villain of their own story. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone they always kind of like rationalize it inside their head. So like for him, because he's gotten away with it and he's not really ever faced much kind of pushback. Well, we don't know. Maybe there was a lot, and then it wasn't public. But if he's done this for however long, maybe it's kind of like, because he hasn't faced any kind of repercussions, it's kind of lowered the bar or lowered the kind of like effect that he perceives it causes.
Yeah, it's like having your own truth, isn't
Yeah.
it? And this is what we kind of discussed over lunch earlier, was we were saying if he's continually been able to like win everything he's done, he's at the top of his game.
Exactly,
he's got Miramax, he's got the Weinstein Company, everything he seems to touch turns to gold. And there's a potential that he gets into a scenario where he almost doesn't abide by like normal rules of engagement in sex because he is so powerful. And I think one of the things that his defense were trying to say was that often it was the sex was like a trade for getting into the industry, which is still not. I think their argument is like he has got a problem with the way he conducts himself sexually. Yeah. But what they seem to be trying to argue is that it was more about people wanting to further their careers and him abusing his power for sex rather than him being predatory. Yeah. And obviously the real world implications are that the way that his power plays were predatory, sorry.
Not penetrative.
Not penetrative, no. But because in the article I was reading in the Times yesterday, it was kind of saying that Alec Baldwin commented on it and said that kind of like this guy was an absolute producer genius, but that it was almost like known in the industry that, for instance, he'd raped Rose McGowan. and she'd just been shot up.
No.
It's pretty crazy.
No, it's pretty worrying. But like going back to that point you were just making there, I've been doing at university. I've been doing a lot of reading into kind of like Haitian literature, following kind of like the dictatorship of the Duvaliers, so like Papa Doc and Baby Doc and all that. And basically a constant theme throughout all the books is kind of like rape, basically, and it's kind of like represents, because I think in kind of Haitian literature, and I guess literature in general, kind of like the female body kind of represents the land, because it kind of gives life and all that kind of stuff. And if when people are being raped in these books, it's supposed to kind of represent a kind of a rape of the land and a rape of the nation. But there was an interesting point I was reading in one of the books recently, where basically a guy who was the Secretary of State for security, he'd rape this woman, but he basically kind of said to her that he knows, or he's surprised that she doesn't know that kind of like the power that she has as a woman, that like this is her kind of exercising her power to allow her family to survive. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No.
Like how we were saying that kind of women using sexuality to kind of progress. It's almost like it's like a tool that they have. Okay,
so the argument from the male perspective,
was that like you were using your sexuality to allow your children and family to survive, so it's not really rape. You know what I mean? This is probably a really controversial topic.
I think the way you're phrasing it is maybe
terrible.
Not terrible, but it's maybe
problematic. Yeah.
I think the point you're trying to make is that this man in the position that he was in,
like it's like an agency,
was having the evaluation that a woman can use sex to advance where a man can't. And I think that for a long time, arguably, that's been the rhetoric of men in power positions.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that we can both agree that that's not the case and it's not fair.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's obviously the mentality that, and probably it's the same mentality, maybe not as direct and descript as this person said it, but it's the same mentality that Weinstein defense lawyers have gone with.
So it's a fair trade. Kind of like you kind of progress in your career and you'll make more money and you'll be successful. Probably,
and this is the thing, is probably in Weinstein's head for most of it. He thought he was doing these people a favour.
Yeah.
Because he felt he had probably had such a god complex. He was like, I basically run Hollywood.
Yeah.
All you have to do is, give me your body and you can.
Because
progress your career. It's pretty disgusting and pretty harrowing, I think.
But it is also like the oldest profession, like known to man, is kind of prostitution.
No, that's the oldest profession known to man is the selling of sex. But I think that there's a difference between selling sex and being in a position where your ability to consent to sex is controlled or pressured.
Yeah, because I always thought it was quite interesting. There was ape research facility in Japan or something where they did this experiment where they gave the chimps kind of like tokens, and then they traded the tokens for foods, but the first thing that the chimps did was the female ones started, or the guy ones started like paying their tokens for sex, basically.
Yeah.
And I guess that's quite interesting, kind of using that.
Yeah, and I think that like sex and sexuality and sexual relationships are such a driving force of our society, ultimately. Probably going back to our instinctual want to recreate.
Yeah.
But
that is literally the reason that we're here, is to procreate.
And it's interesting I know a few people I've met in my time, not well enough to really ask this, but I've met a few people who identify as asexual, so not sexually...
Like a bacteria.
No, not that's really, yeah, but no, not asexual in the fact that they can recreate themselves, but asexual in that they aren't sexualized either way, male or female, or to whatever you can be sexually attracted to. It'd be really interesting to ask someone in that position, like, what are your motivators and how different they are to our motivators, and to see how clouded our motivators are by sex.
Yeah, because I was listening to a podcast a while ago. I can't remember who it was. Knowing me, it was probably Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Where they were talking about how it's very strange, this whole kind of like modern work environment with like men and women working together in the office. I think they were saying something along the lines of, you spend more time in the office with these people than you do spend time with like your own family, in your free time, and it is completely natural that people will be attracted to each other. And I think they said that what percentage of relationships are formed in the office?
I don't know what percentage of relationships are formed in the office, but it seems to me to be so obvious that so many relationships are formed in working. Sorry, that's us pouring a bit more wine, if you can hear that on the thing. It seems
Have one with us.
Yeah, cheers.
Not if you're driving.
Cheers, Josh.
Cheers, man.
It does seem super obvious that, like, for instance, like in every workplace that I've worked in, there's always been relationships. Always been relationships. Always been people hooking up. I mean, it has been hospitality. So, I mean, that is slightly more, probably more liberal with kind of sexual interaction. I think it'd be different in an office,
because there's not much kind of power play you can have apart from kind of maybe choosing shifts. So.
Yeah, I guess there's very rarely. I mean, it does still happen that managers sleep with staff. Yeah,
but it's not as kind of like, because there's not really that much of a hierarchy of.
Yeah, because I know that, for instance, there was the guy who was the chief executive of McDonald's had to step down
because they weren't loving it.
He was loving it, but they weren't. Essentially, what happened was, and
that would be such an insensitive. I can imagine someone like the Sun using that title.
Yeah, that's such a tabloid red top way to describe it. Essentially, I read the article. There was a guy who was kind of the CEO, I think, of McDonald's in kind of the UK, maybe Europe, or maybe specifically in the UK or Western Europe or something, but a pretty reasonably high job. He'd split up with his wife. They were divorced. He then had a relationship with either like his PA or someone that was like just below him. But like completely consensual. He was divorced from his wife. There didn't seem to be any sort of power play. They just worked together a lot. They really liked each other, and they were in a relationship. But because of the corporate system and hierarchy, you need to declare relationships like that. Did you know that as well?
I didn't know that.
So if you're up like really high in a company, like if you have a relationship with someone in the company, you need to declare it. Yeah. How crazy is that? Yeah. I mean, it does kind of make sense because you want to be able to protect people in it, but it also seems kind of, when you just put it in that sense, it seems crazy. But essentially, he didn't declare this, what seems to be on the face of it, very consensual, loving relationship. Yeah. And because of that, because of the safeguards put in place to stop kind of power plays in the workplace, he had to step down, which is super interesting. I don't know if the woman that he was dating, who I don't know if she had to leave the company either. I imagine she was allowed to stay. No. I'm not saying, the only point I'm making about that is how crazy it is, relationships just in the workplace and stuff. Yeah.
But it's because it's bound to happen. Just having men and women around each other, people are going to be attracted to each other. It's going to happen.
Men and men, women and women as well. Like,
exactly.
You know, any sort of which way that you can be attracted to someone, if you spend this much time. I mean, I at the moment work, as I was saying to you earlier, about just over between 40 and 45 hours a week. Yeah. So if you want to say, if you sleep 8 hours a week, which leaves you with like 16 hours a day for 7 days. Yeah. What's that? 112 hours. You're spending almost half of that. Yeah. Your waking hours in work. And then often we go and drink with each other after work. Like,
especially in hospitality.
Hospitality, I think, is probably the most exaggerated of the industries for kind of people hooking up with each other.
It feels much more like a social gathering.
Yeah, I think as well, predominantly you're working with people in and around their early 20s who are often relatively extroverted, and they are working and drinking a lot together. I think it's always going to happen, but it seems to happen in all, scenarios. I mean, one of the biggest plot lines in The Office was, Martin Freeman fancying the receptionist.
Yeah.
And everything that went, and then with the American one, Jim and I don't know what the name is. I've never really watched them, but I know. But that's all that's based on an office, and the biggest kind of like one of the biggest tropes throughout the whole thing is this like ongoing will they won't they scenario with people like that.
Yeah. But I guess it kind of goes back to kind of what we're talking earlier on about kind of like forbidden love being like the strongest, you know what I mean? Sweet nectar.
Yeah, I think it obviously creates a slightly more it creates more interest. The whole Adam and Eve kind of scenario. But I think we've got to make sure we remember that we're talking about the Weinstein conviction. We're not. I mean, it has led us into kind of the debate over workplace relationships and power plays within the workplace relationships. But I think that ultimately it's a good thing that he's been sentenced. Hopefully, when he goes to LA and has the sentencing there, he faces the true justice there as well. But the one thing that sorry, you go.
I was just gonna say that I think he's been sentenced. Is it up to? I think it's 23 years or something. No, 29 years. Yeah. Actually, yeah. So it's Harvey. He faces up to 29 years in prison, and God, that's pretty. I think there's 11 women bringing appeals against him in LA. So this was just the New York stuff. How many of them? None of them are the actresses or anything, are they?
I think a few of them are. They're in the industry.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly who they are. The thing for me that was a really interesting element to it.
Yeah.
I think I was reading the Metro today. Was that Trump came out and said, "This is a great win for the Me Too movement."
Well, at least he's on board, I guess.
But I just wonder what you think of the whole of like.
Because he's had allegations against him, hasn't he?
That was the point.
Yeah, and the whole thing with him being friendly with
Epstein.
Yeah.
It felt a bit.
I don't know why. I don't know how much of that's true.
Well,
there hasn't been anything kind of solidified, and he hasn't been taken to court for it.
Well, one thing is, he's probably not got the best track record. Arguably, every girl I know and I've talked to has said that they've experienced some
form of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere.
As men, none of us are whiter than white. I would argue.
Yeah.
I mean, probably as the president, he's got to comment on a case as big as that. Yeah. But it's interesting to see some of the allegations against him. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think one of the analyses I read, and I'm terribly sorry, I can't remember her name.
You can say terribly well read.
No. It was just a really interesting piece that someone said. It was in the Times again. This would have been Tuesday morning, so the Tuesday edition of the Times. I think it was page 9, but I can't tell you who it was who wrote it. I think her first name might have been Judith. But basically, she said it was nice to have an actual solid. Like actual confirmation of the Me Too movement, because there's been a lot of kind of stuff thrown around, and it's what she said as well, which I thought was very self-aware, was like she said that she was a big feminist, big supporter of the Me Too movement, but she was worried about how much it had become kind of mob rule and mob justice. And she said that it was good to see that we'd actually taken this, done the due diligence, done the due process, and they'd been given justice by an actual court of law.
Rather than frontier justice.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah,
It's because it's was it Bill Cosby was convicted, wasn't he?
He's in jail.
I think he was the most prolific rapist of our time. I think it was like, was it 60 something women?
Was it more he molested people?
So I knew he like drugged them.
He drugged them, and I think he kind of like molested them.
Yeah, well, I won't be able to get this up.
I'm also very wary of how this is quite a deep subject. It's quite cutting.
It is. Probably quite controversial.
It is controversial, but again, I think like most of the things that we talk about on the podcast, it's
a bit more lighthearted.
Well, no, but we don't always necessarily have the answers. But I think it's just being part of the debate is being part of the discussion of progress.
Yeah.
Is kind of.
And I think like this movement, for all its faults, if you can point them out, kind of like this whole kind of mob mentality and like just mobbing someone or whatever, but it's a step in the right direction, and I think that will be better for it at the end of the day. And it's just constant progress. We look back and see things that we said kind of 5 years ago and we're just like, oh god, how could we say that? Or look back at TV shows and we're like, god, that's crazy. Like how were people allowed to just like all these kind of like movie stars in the 60s with the guys literally beating a woman for the role, and it's like it's genuinely like a guy beating a woman.
Did Marlon Brando, did he not actually hit the co-star in Streetcar Named Desire? I feel like I
might have been, and also there was
remember reading about that he actually.
Who's the big action star?
Which one? Clint Eastwood? No, the other one.
Yeah, there was a.
You know the one I'm talking about, the Western star, John Wayne.
John Wayne. Was it. Yeah, he fucking beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Christian
Bale. And Christian Bale, because I'm not a big fan of Christian Bale. We talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
Because he beat the shit out of his wife and his sister and his mother and stuff like that. And it just was just like
no one's safe.
No, it was just so okay. That's one thing that I can never imagine
doing.
Is like hitting a woman.
Well, I guess with all these kind of situations, you never imagine you're capable of it until it happens.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And we have to not just throw verdict and shade on people.
Yeah, because with people like that, I guess. Like this is like
I've been angry though. Yeah. I've been angry.
This is a devil's advocate kind of like stance, and like just kind of like almost maybe too much sympathy. But with people in these kind of situations that have been kind of arrested for like assaulting their spouse or whatever it is, like when I was growing up, my mum would always say kind of like with bullies, just imagine their kind of situation and imagine what has led them to that. And like it's very easy to kind of throw judgment on people and kind of accuse them of something and say that they're a monster. But it goes like we were saying earlier on, no one's the villain of their own story.
Yeah.
There's always something behind it, and these people who are bullies, they've had terrible childhoods, and like it's very easy to kind of cast judgment at someone, but we don't know we wouldn't know what we'd do in that situation. We'd probably do the same thing.
Well, you never know until you're there, do you?
Exactly.
It's a bit like that Key and Peele sketch. Have you seen the one about the bully?
I've seen them all. Which one?
There's the one about where Jordan Peele is playing this bully, and he's like bullying Key, and he's bullying about reading.
Yeah,
and he's like, "What is it? Because you can't read?" And he's like, "Well, that doesn't matter. You don't know that I can't read." And then, and then you see at the end, the bully gets picked up by his dad, and his dad's a bully as well, and it's this kind of trickle down effect.
No, it's like vampires.
Yeah, and I mean like another kind of related to kind of domestic violence, the whole Caroline Flack story.
Jesus, yeah.
Again, which is really sad. A bit of context, I think, to those who don't know, and again, this is kind of just skim the surface reading of articles about it. Caroline Flack had a boyfriend, was accused of domestic abuse. She threw a lamp at his head, and I think just the horrendous backlash on social media, she took her life. Actually took her life on the day of your party. We were at Pre's at your sister's, and I got the update on my phone.
Oh, shit, was that then?
Yeah, I was having a cigarette out the window,
no,
and I got the message, and I came into the living room and I said, Caroline Flack's been found dead.
Jesus.
And it was really sad. I mean, ultimately, and this goes again, the whole idea that nobody's whiter than white, nobody's a monster at the same time.
Apart from Joseph Fritz or whatever his name is.
Well, there's arguably there's less than bad people. So have you seen that James Acaster sketch where he says about the worst person in the world?
Probably have.
So it's a sketch where he's like, you ever thought about that? There is a worst person in the world.
Oh yeah, no, it's just like whenever you're at school, you think you may be the top of your class in something, but there'll always be someone that's better than you. There's always someone more at something.
But he was saying that there's like a lot of bad people, but there's one who is the worst.
Yeah, well there must be. Yeah.
And he was saying, I mean, it's definitely a man, was what he said, which is true.
No.
But he was like, imagine having that realization that you are the number one out of like 8 billion people. You're the number one worst person in the world.
There must be someone, yeah.
But back to the Caroline Flack thing, it's sad. I don't think anyone should, you know, let me rephrase that. I think if you get into a place where you want to take your own life, that is a very desperate place.
Yeah.
And I've been in places myself before when I've thought about, you know, what's the point? Would it just be better if I wasn't here kind of situation?
No.
Not too long ago I was having a bad day, and for those listeners who don't know, I have suffered for depression and mental health issues for a number of years. I just had this really weird urge. I was on the platform of the subway. I just had this weird urge just to step in front of the train. It's really strange.
But it's like whenever you're like on top of a cliff, like you just
there's like that kind of like,
because I spend a lot of time on top of the cliffs.
Yeah. Just spend a lot of time on high horses.
Yeah. Looking down. But yeah, you just kind of get this urge to jump. But I think that's kind of like, it's kind of like maybe like an inner expression of kind of maybe free will.
Maybe it is, and maybe it's also this thing which we talked about the whole, the closer you are to death, the more alive you feel. That kind of being able to actually be at the, because like having the conversation now and saying like, would I have stepped out in front of it? No, obviously not. But being in that situation and looking at it and the kind of thought process that you have in your head, your mind starts speeding up and everything goes quicker, and it's scary. But I think that in Caroline Flack's position, to have that kind of bombardment of the media, especially when it's a beast that you can't control.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had it personally as well, when there are things being said and talked about and you don't know and you can't control. It is quite daunting, and you do feel quite alone. It is very sad that she took her own life. Yeah. Because
it's there was something I was reading, I can't remember where it was. I think it was probably my mum. She's quite Facebook active. Shared an article about how like a lot of people were kind of boycotting tabloid media.
Yeah, I agree.
Saying that this should be like a sign of like the end of tabloid, because it's so corrosive, and it's just essentially clickbait. It's just trying to get people, like, it's just headlines that are
riled up. Yeah, it's not really new information, is it?
It's not even important. All it's doing is just intruding on people's personal space, just for that kind of like crazy like window into their kind of personal lives.
Yeah, that exhibitionist.
Yeah.
Or no, not even exhibitionist. That voyeurism. That kind of looking into someone else's life and that kind of comparison and where do you put yourself in that debate, and it's scary and it's sad that it's taking lives, and it's sad that, you know, people in every situation. The thing as well that seems to be so bad about the news at the moment is that it seems to point fingers at everyone. Like, it's not, especially when you're talking about kind of being self-conscious and having kind of social anxiety because of the media.
No.
There doesn't seem to be one safe group. Like maybe in the past when you've talked about having scapegoats in society, if you were of one group, maybe you could feel safe. But it seems to be that the media is pointing fingers.
It's just whatever sells, to be
at
honest.
everyone, though. Yeah. Whether it's because of your sexuality or your religion or the colour of your skin or your hair colour or even your haircut or the clothes you wear or the football team you support. Yeah. There seems to be, you can be deemed kind of bad and you can be punished for anything, and it's so hypocritical. I imagine if you took the wider breadth of all media and looked at who the finger was being pointed at, it would be an absolute crisscross of fingers, because everybody being pointed at each other. And it is really sad. And Russell Brand, I saw, who I have mixed feelings about, because I think he says a lot of good stuff. I also think he says a lot of shite.
Get him to the Greek.
He's amazing in getting to the Greek. I mean, arguably we can't also point at him for saying a lot of good and a lot of bad, because we do that as well. But he's got a bigger platform.
Yeah.
But
so fuck him.
No, I do ultimately like him. But he came out and wrote a really quite nice. It was nice in a sense, and it was also quite poignant about the whole Caroline Flack suicide, and about how the media is the devil, really, and it is sad.
Yeah, no, it's very vicious and quite cannibalistic as well.
Yeah, exactly. You can be in favour one week and out the other, and that for me is so scary.
That must be so terrifying. Like being in the because that's something just that never really occurs to kind of most people, is that okay, if I was to leave the house wearing this, or as a woman, if I was to leave the house like not wearing any makeup, and like say some fucking creepy tabloid photographer or something was like hiding in a bush trying to get a fucking upskirt as I like walk past. Like it's just the intensity of it all. It's disgusting.
I don't even think we can comprehend it.
We can't. No, it's insane. And you see all these videos of I can't remember who it was. Was it Justin Bieber or something? Was like driving his car and like a bunch of like random people came at him at like an intersection and started like taking photos of him at his car, and he just like rolled the window down and was like fuck off, and then like they sold that as like, oh, Justin Bieber's a wanker.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, because you're like, look at how you're acting. But it's such a destructive kind of way of doing things, because kind of especially with newspapers and stuff like that, everyone wants to be like the first person to get a story out, because it gives you tons of like credibility. And it just benefits the newspaper. So they always want to be the first person to kind of air a story, and for that reason they'll kind of do really unethical shit. Like I think it was Kobe, when Kobe died. Like his family found out that Kobe died through the media.
Oh really?
They didn't notify his family first before publishing the article, because they were so desperate. Seriously,
that's disgusting.
To get the story out, because they wanted to be first.
Imagine, that's disgusting.
Yeah, no, it's terrible, because like they have a go at all these people for doing shit, but their own morals, because they're so tragically skewed by corporate needs or whatever it may be. It's so hypocritical. Do you know what I mean?
It is, yeah.
Like criticizing people for that and then just doing such unmoral shit like that.
I mean, I even think about like the day that we've had. So we went for like a pint earlier on at like, I don't know, 2:15. Can you imagine if we were famous and someone had taken a picture of us when we were having a cigarette, and they were like, oh, Josh Andrews and Darragh Meakin drinking during the day, are they alcoholics? Like, are they? Do you not like? Can you imagine if everything you did was critiqued?
No.
Like,
because it's like the whole idea of kind of portraying. If you were to take people doing all their worst shit and kind of condense that into like a file and just send that over to, I don't know, whoever is like reviewing it, they would be like, this is a fucking terrible person. This is horrible, but it doesn't take into account all the good stuff or just completely neutral stuff you do. Like it's so many people do so many crazy so much different stuff throughout their life, and if you're to focus on one specific part, you can make anyone look like a monster. You can make anyone look like a monster.
I mean, I've always said, and it's kind of I almost feel like a strapline of my approach to life, but I think the most human thing to be is a hypocrite.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's a fucking hypocrite.
The most human notion is hypocrisy. To do one thing and then do another that are completely at odds with each other, but still completely on brand for who you are as a human.
Yeah.
Like I am under no illusion that I'm like a good person overall. I have done bad things and still continue to do things that are arguably not right, or like, I don't know, maybe not the most morally wrong. You know, I don't always give money to charity or stuff like this, but there's also been times when I've done arguably very good things. I think that a character attack on one specific thing is so limited, but that's ultimately where we've got to as society, because
it's so much easier to post someone as being a monster than to go into the details of their entire life.
I think even more than it is to post someone being a monster.
Well, not even
if you take one like act that happens, right, and you look at one thing, it's easier to tell that story than to tell the complex and nuanced story of a whole person and why they got to that specific position.
That's one thing I really feel is disappearing nowadays, is nuance.
Exactly. I mean, like, say
like, you can be one thing and one thing only.
Yeah. So say in this crazy, you know, alternative universe where the pair of us are famous, and we go out one night and, like, I don't know, I punch someone or something in the face, and then that's an easy story to sell. Do you know what I mean? Like, famous person for whatever reason, Darragh Meakin punches someone in the face in a bar. What a dick. Like, that's such a snapshot of, you know, like, the wider film that is our lives. Like, it just seems really regressive to take things on such a...
if you were to clip, like, a single moment and then hold someone accountable for that, like, going back to that whole kind of thing of, like, someone, like, kind of pissing you off, like, when you're kind of, like, walking around. Like, have you seen that video of I think it's Quentin Tarantino when he's back in his, like, hometown, and then he's just like walking around in the snow, and then some, like, random photographer comes up and starts trying to, like, take a picture of him, and he, like, shoves him off, and he's like, leave me alone or whatever, and then he says he's gonna, like, break his camera, and then he's like, oh, what did you say, and he's like, and then he, like, regrets it, and he says, like, well, obviously I'm not gonna do that or whatever. But, like, it kind of, like, that split second kind of portrays them as kind of being, like, crazy.
Yeah.
And you kind of hold them, and you're just like, okay, so this person's crazy, look what he did at this point. Like, but it's just because it sells, and it's easy and it's quick to consume.
And I also think it's like how you interact with these people.
Yeah.
I think it's like there is a tendency to see people in the news and think that they're caricatures of themselves, and then treat them and approach them like they are, you know, not human. Like they are characters that they play.
Yeah.
I'll give you two stories. One story was where I went to school was near where Jude Law's kid went to school. His son. Jude Law was in a Costa once, near where we used to live. And a couple of girls were in there having a coffee and saw him and wanted his autograph. And, like, went up and tried to ask him for the autograph. But but he was, like, in the middle of having a conversation.
It's another glass of wine, guys.
Yeah, it's enough, mate. Cheers. He was in the middle of having a conversation. So essentially he said, guys, can you, like, give me some space? And they were a bit like, oh, what a dick. And I kind of felt like it sounded like he was having, like, a business meeting. And I was like, let the guy have the business meeting. And on the flip side was Craig Ferguson, who I don't know if you know. I don't know if I told you about this, actually.
I recognise the name.
So before James Corden was the star of the Late Late Show, there was a guy called Craig Ferguson.
Oh, the Scottish guy.
Yeah, the comedian. He actually lives.
Does he?
Like, literally across the road.
I do actually. Yeah. He's a big flirt, that guy, isn't he?
He's a cool guy. I'm a fan of his comedy. I listen to a lot of his comedy online and stuff on YouTube. He was in the restaurant the other day. And yeah, and he came in and he was sat in the corner with his wife and his kid, and I immediately recognised who he was. And actually, the reason I recognised who he was, he's got this really cool on his left arm. He's got this, like, tattoo of it's like an eagle, and that was the first thing I saw. And I'd actually been literally the night before, I'd been watching one of his comedy skits, And I saw the tattoo, and I saw him, and I saw his face, and I was like, that's Craig Ferguson.
So does he live in Scotland then?
He lives like across the road from us.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to give the address, but he lives, that's his gaff there.
Really? Fuck.
Yeah. He owns the whole building though.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he was in, and I really wanted to say something, because I'm obviously I'm a fan, and I'm a bit starstruck. I think he's really cool, he's really clever, he's obviously done all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in the context of what I'm saying about treating the person like a human, I served the table through the night. I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the guy's just trying to have some food with his family.
Yeah.
And it was only at the end, after he'd paid, and I saw one of my colleagues took the payment, and I went over and I said, look, I didn't want to interrupt you during the meal, but I'm like a really big fan. I love your work and everything. And he was like, oh mate, thanks so much. He shook my hand. He was really nice about it. And then when he was leaving with his wife and kid, like they walked past, and I was serving on the table and said, oh mate, nice to see you again. And I was like, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
Like he was really nice about it. But I imagine if it had been a different situation and I hadn't had the thought process of like, let him have his meal, and then just say a little something at the end. If I'd gone up to him when he was like midway through like a slice of pizza or something, I'd been like, oh mate, tell us a joke.
Oh, you're that fucking...
Yeah, you're that guy. Hey, tell us a joke, big man. You're a funny man. Hey, funny guy, make me laugh. Do you know what I mean? Then he would have been like,
dance.
do you know what? Fuck off. Like, and I completely understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that, and this is
trying
kind
to
of
empathise with him.
Yeah, this is kind of what Russell Brand said in his post on Facebook, was that you can never understand fame until you have it. And then when you have it, you almost don't want it.
Yeah.
And the thing with Justin Bieber, again, is like, I've said it a lot, especially with like younger people who go off the rails, is I always try and be empathetic. I always try and say, you know, you don't know someone's situation until you walked a mile in their shoes, kind of thing. What would I be like if I was in that position? If I was the number one selling artist in the world, you know, I could have whatever I wanted. And you hear these stories about these artists going to like venues and saying, like, Beyonce wants her Fiji water at like exactly 38 degrees, something crazy like that.
That's quite warm. Wait, Fahrenheit or?
Nah, Celsius.
Celsius. Yeah.
But you can ask for this kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah. You
would be an arsehole. Like,
no.
How could you not?
Yeah.
If
everyone keeps telling that you're amazing, then it's gonna start to seep in. Do you know what I mean?
It's like the stories with all the Glasgow Warrior boys who are like kicking about Glasgow, and like quite a few girls we know from uni have dated them or like hooked up with them. Supposedly they're all arseholes. But ultimately, you know, if you're like because you could arguably be like the same age as us. And be a starting player for Glasgow and like Scotland or another nation.
Yeah. Especially with sport, I'd say.
Yeah, playing international sport, getting paid all this money, going wherever you wanted, blah, blah, blah. And also getting told by your coaches week in, week out, you are the best.
Yeah.
You're the best guy in the world. You're the best at this, you're the fastest, you're the strongest.
And with certain sports, you need that. You need that kind of confidence to go in, especially with like MMA, for example. Or like a fighting kind of situation. You need that kind of confidence to go in, because it's like the whole kind of situation with like Conor McGregor. Like, he seems like a cocky bastard going into it, but you need to be in that kind of mentality if you're going to do shit like that. And
also, realistically, Dana White at the head of the UFC seems to kind of promote this idea of this aggression and this shit talking, because ultimately it sells tickets.
Yeah.
If it was like, for instance, if it was me and you fighting and we're like friends and we respect each other,
I don't respect you.
You're already thinking like a UFC fighter.
Man, I'd fucking beat you.
Yeah, but that whole idea that like if it's two people who are like pretty agreeable, they're just at the top of their game, and they're gonna have like an even contest, that's not gonna sell tickets. I don't want to see that.
They're shaking their hand at the end. You don't want that. You want fucking spitting in each other's faces.
But if it's a case of I'm chatting smack about your mother, and you're saying that you hooked up with my girlfriend, and like we're just like spitting at each other.
You probably have to stop the podcast.
We're trying to fight at the weigh-ins and stuff like that. That sells tickets, and that aggro and that increased media attention. Yeah. That
gets people blood boiling.
And ultimately, I'm sure it affects these guys' payday as well, because the more people who tune in, the more people who want to see the fight, the bigger the fight.
To be fair, especially with stuff like that, because I'd say things like the boxing or like MMA or sports like that, which are kind of strictly kind of pay-per-view.
Yeah.
They are a lot more kind of centered on people watching it on that night. There'll be a lot of people kind of obviously they kind of like streaming it. I think recently there was a guy who streamed who's it? Someone was it? It might have been the Jake Paul fight. This guy like streamed it off like the reflection on his glasses on Facebook. So he did like a live stream of him watching the fight, but it was like reflected off his glasses.
So he couldn't get done for...
Yeah, so that's how so many people like watched the fight. Was on this guy's glasses, yeah.
Because I actually watched the Fury Wilder fight.
I watched that as well, yeah.
I watched the fight, and it looked like it was a guy or girl, I don't know, just a person who had kind of got the stream up, and then they'd, you can almost like just record your screen. So they were watching the stream, and then they were recording their screen of the stream, saying a lot of similar words, because actually at the top of it said the whole time, like, Firefox has blocked 2 pop-ups on this website. Was a little bar at the top of it. So it was obvious that it was... And he put it up on... they'd put it up on YouTube, and I watched it off that. But the whole thing that was funny about that was the whole beginning bit with...
Did a bunch of adverts keep popping up saying... horny middle-aged woman near
you. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. No, Firefox had blocked the 2 pop-ups. But it was the whole thing about... It was really funny as well to hear the American commentators talking about Tyson Fury being like a gypsy king. Because they kept referencing the fact that he was a gypsy and he was from the Irish travelling community. Obviously, like, not knowing anything really about it.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was he came in first and the walk-in, he got up onto what was almost like, like they have in like 300 with the Ottoman Empire, who's on the throne on the like sticks and it's being carried.
The Persian, Xerxes.
Xerxes.
Yeah. The massive golden.
Yeah. So he was sat on like that kind of throne with like the poles, and then there were like these kind of models were holding the pole, but it was actually like on an actual wheeled thing. They were just models holding it. Yeah. But it was so funny because he was on this throne.
Especially that was made of gold. God knows how much that would have.
No, it wasn't real.
Yeah.
The Xerxes one, I think, was meant to be made of gold, wasn't it? But he was just on it. But it was funny because he was also just wearing like the kind of fancy dress crown you could buy in like a fancy dress shop. Yeah. And then Deontay Wilder came in and they had this like rapper doing this like rap song, and it was all about like Black Lives Matter, Black everything. I think was like the strap line of the song. And he was wearing this suit that was like kind of a cross between Predator and Batman.
Okay.
Like Google it now, Deontay Wilder outfit Fury fight. It is so ridiculous. He also blamed the fact that he lost the fight
on what was it
on
again?
the suit.
What was it? The suit?
It was like the thing that he wore on top. He said it was £40. It was too heavy and it fucked his leg up.
Oh, I thought you meant it cost £40.
No,
I don't. I imagine people like that would be wearing a £40 suit to a fight.
And when I say suit, like costume, I mean.
Yeah.
I'll get it up the picture for you.
I'm not connected to your internet. Funnily enough, the French for suit is costume.
Yeah. Look, this is it here.
Oopsie.
You see that?
What is he wearing?
I know, it's ridiculous.
It looks like some kind of like crazy like Aztec priest outfit.
Yeah, so it says here, he blames the
neon.
loss on the £45 costume he wore before fight. Mate, he got bitched about.
Yeah, I watched the fight.
Bitched.
But that's the thing, because Tyson Fury is just so technical.
It's the thing that's so funny about him, because on paper you'd imagine he's just some sort of brawler, but he's. I'm not claiming to have a real understanding of boxing, even though at one point I was technically a boxing promoter. But he supposedly is just an absolute technical genius. Yeah. He just worked him out. Yeah. He worked out what his strengths were, what his weaknesses were, and he just capitalised on them, which is pretty good.
Because I watched the fight, and it just Tyson Fury the whole time just seemed to be doing kind of quick, calculated jabs. And I remember I was watching Joe Rogan talk about this, and he was saying that he's really kind of technically literate in boxing, and that he's so random with what he does that it's almost impossible to tell what he's going to do next. So he's going to have like 3 left jabs, and then something like a right hook and then a body shot, whatever. So
but this was the thing that was really interesting about the fight, is that so again, don't know a huge amount about boxing, but they've been playing unified rules.
Yeah.
So one of the parts of unified rules is that only the ref can stop the fight. So in some boxings, you can throw in the towel from your corner, and that ends the fight.
Okay.
But in this instance, only the ref can end the fight.
Is it a bring your own towel kind of situation?
In those situations, it would be bring your own towel. But in this situation, the ref has a towel.
Okay.
Probably everyone has a towel, but they can't throw it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. It's
But
like a rap battle.
quite early, I think like the second round, he gets hit in the ear and he's just bleeding out of his ear.
Yeah.
He's probably burst his eardrum. They keep saying in the commentary,
Jesus.
and that's why his kind of footing seems off, because your ears keep your balance.
Your balance, yeah. Oh yeah. Cool.
And so basically, by the 7th round, he's getting pummeled in the face, and his corner is saying to the ref, like, just end this now, and he ends it, and he gets really angry with his corner and suppose he's going to fire them. But I genuinely think the guy could have come out with like serious brain damage.
Oh, definitely.
If not.
Do you think they should do a third fight?
So the first one was a draw, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, rock, paper, scissors, you'd do 3, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think I want to see him fight Joshua.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the next big one.
Because if he fights Joshua, then that's like the ultimate. I think he'll beat Joshua as well. I don't think Joshua's as smart as Fury is. I think he's fitter. So I think he's like the fittest boxer. But I think Fury would have him, mate.
Yeah, because there's something about Fury that's it's not like
he's so likable, mate. I really like him. I'm rooting for him. I want him to win.
I love his kind of like slightly, kind of like almost out of shape looking kind of body, but he still manages to go in there. It's like Andy Ruiz. Do you know Andy Ruiz?
Yeah.
Just like the big gut fucking goes all in, and then Butterbean as well.
I don't know who Butterbean is.
He was a big kind of boxer, American boxer. He was a big fat guy, big fat bald guy. He was in the Jackass 3. Remember, he went into a shop and beat the shit out of Johnny Knoxville for one of their pranks.
Oh, I think I remember that actually.
Yeah.
You seen the one on Jackass where they do the it's like American football, but they get an actual linebacker.
Which was that?
So they do like they're on like a football pitch.
Yeah.
And they're just it's like just mostly the Jackass guys, and then there's one, I can't remember who he is or what team he's from, but he's like an actual American footballer.
Yeah.
And he's like huge, Josh. He's like 6'6", just built like a brick shit house. Sorry.
I never know which one
it's a brick shit house. I always get it wrong.
I always say shit brick house.
Because a shit brick house wouldn't be built very well, but a brick shit house would be built well. It's a brick shit house, and basically they just like throw the ball towards Johnny Knoxville, and he just creams him.
Yeah.
It's so funny, but
God, there's some crazy bastards.
Yeah, Jackass guys are crazy.
Isn't it? Was it Johnny Knoxville can't have kids anymore because he's been punched in the balls so many times?
I don't know if it's just punched, but he's been hit in the balls so many times.
Fucking hell. Do you remember that one where they went in with the bull and the...
Oh, that's crazy.
With a seesaw kind of thing.
Do you think you could do any of the skits that they do?
I mean, if I pushed myself, I could probably do like the disgusting shit. But the ones where like God, I can't remember where it was. I saw this one the other day. But the guy went in. I think it was Johnny Knoxville. He went in with a massive bloody fuck off snake, and he went in just kind of with his arm up, and he kept like slowly like going towards the snake, and the snake like jumped up and bit his arm. There's blood going everywhere, and then he's just like, and he goes back in. It's just like it's a completely different mentality. Them and the Dirty Sanchez boys.
Yeah, it's just like a fascination with pain.
Yeah.
I imagine they'd be weird in the bedroom. Can you imagine?
God.
Probably sadists. Yeah.
Imagine what gets them off. Yeah.
Yeah. There's the whole thing. I find Steve-O very interesting.
Steve was actually a really interesting character
because he's just had such a weird life. Because I think his dad's like a Canadian politician or something stupid like that.
Because they found him in a bus stop. Oh no!
I told you about this. They were driving along. They were driving along, and he was at a petrol station.
Yeah.
And he came outside and he was like, I love the show, I really want to be on a show. And they were like, do something crazy. And he had a goldfish.
Yeah.
Like the one you win from like a fair, and he just ate the goldfish
contest,
whole.
yeah.
He just put it in his mouth and swallowed it. I just think anyone that has a full back tattoo of their own face is just hilarious.
Oh god, that's gonna be one of the best things they've done.
I listened to him on Joe Rogan, and his stories are fucking mental, man. Like,
yeah, if that's
so
what they get
mental.
up to on camera, God knows what the fuck they do off camera.
Like some of his stories about just when he was touring.
Yeah.
I also think it's a really interesting all his talk about like alcoholism and like drug addiction and stuff.
Yeah.
The one phrase that really sticks with me is like he described alcoholism like being like a cucumber. Once you're pickled, you can't go back to being a cucumber.
I thought you were going to say you're 8% water or something.
No. No, he was basically saying like, you know, people who have become alcoholics and then think they can drink again, they can't. Like once you become pickled, like you've changed your composition. Can't go back to it.
So as in like it doesn't get you as fucked as before?
No. He's saying that you can't be an alcoholic, go sober, and then go back to just drinking casually. Like you're always gonna have it in you to become like mad.
Yeah.
With alcohol.
Like a werewolf.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
But he's interesting, man.
Yeah, he's a very, very interesting guy. But like, what do they get up to when they go on their like touring? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do they like? Because I remember, God, when I was at school, I watched a couple of like Dirty Sanchez's things, and I remember they'd go around kind of like Ayia Napa or wherever it was, and they go to these like small kind of like venues, and just literally throw darts at each other's balls and like do crazy shit like that for about an hour and a half and then leave.
I think that's kind of the similar stuff to, I imagine, what the Jackass guys did. On that podcast with Steve-O, he said that he wanted to set himself on fire.
For political reasons.
No. What's that called? Emulation? Self-emulation?
I don't know.
Is that
Maybe.
when you set yourself on fire?
That sounds right.
I'm trying to read more. I'm trying to get bigger words, but I think it's self-emulation. I'm not sure.
Tracker.
But basically, he got in an argument with the people who were putting on the event because they were like, "Mate, you're in a stage room. You can't just like set yourself on fire.
You can't smoke in here, let alone set yourself on fire."
But he wanted to do this gag where he basically dropped like gasoline on him and set himself on fire, and then he did a flip.
Yeah.
And then he put himself out. I was like,
I seem to remember whenever I was younger, there was a guy I knew who would, like, for a joke, I think he put either petrol, no, not petrol, like some kind of like alcohol or something on his hands, like something really, really flammable, and he'd like light it on fire. But because it was just the alcohol burning, it wouldn't actually burn his hand. Yeah,
there's things you can do with that. It's like, I think maybe like rubbing alcohol.
Yeah.
Or the one I remember, we were in Ireland. I'm half Irish, to the listeners who don't know us personally.
We've been over this though.
I feel like most of the listeners actually do.
The
know
loyal
us
listeners will know.
But also,
and you know who you are.
Yeah. Shout out to our day ones. But we were in Ireland, and we'd been across to the west coast, came back to Dublin. We were staying the night before we flew back. We were having a drink one night, and I must have only been about 17, 18. So I've still been drinking for a good few years, but
good Irish stock.
Yeah, my uncle was like, "Do you want to try this putchin?" Putchin, which is like moonshine, Irish moonshine. It's made from potatoes. He used to make it in vats out in the country. It's like very like similar. If you take moonshine and all the gangster glamour of America and then just make it just an old guy in Ireland, that's basically what putchin is. But it's like 80-90% alcohol. It's fucking strong. And he poured like a thimble's worth of this putchin into a glass. I don't even think he'd opened it before this. And he was like, "Have a sip of that." And I sipped it and genuinely just got an instant headache. It was so strong.
No.
It was the strongest thing I've ever like drank, it was horribly strong.
Yeah.
It tasted almost of pure ethanol.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I had like, it was literally a small thimbles for like an inch worth, and I had half an inch, and then he was like, do you want the rest of it? I was like, absolutely not. And he threw it in the fire, and the fire went for a second, and I was like, holy fuck, like that stuff's like
burned bright blue for
it did it burned slightly blue. Yeah. Well, is blue real hot heat? Is it?
I think blue's like when you burn like sugar and stuff.
Yeah. It's a fermentation of starch, so
ethanol,
it would be sugar.
Makes
Yeah,
sense,
ethanol's, yeah. But yeah, man, it was funny. It was crazy. I always remember that like instant like front lobe headache.
Yeah.
Because it was like obviously, I don't know, it was obviously so strong.
You just went straight to the hangover.
No, it was so strong that it must have like the alcohol going into the bloodstream must have shut off some of the oxygen going to my brain.
And killed however many million cells.
Yeah. I imagine if alcohol kills brain cells, I haven't got many left.
He's trying to get as many.
As I say that, pass me a glass.
Yeah. Let's kill some more. But have you ever tried absinthe?
I feel like I have. I'm not like. Shall I just finish this?
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. I feel like I have. I'm not a mad fan, but isn't it said that like, you know, if you drink enough absinthe, you kind of hallucinate?
Yeah, they called it the Green Fairy, I think it was.
Yeah. It's pretty mad.
Yeah.
Have you drank it? I'm guessing you have because you asked the question.
I haven't actually.
Have you not?
No, actually no, I did actually one time. I think it's illegal in.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, bro. It's illegal in however many. How many countries is it illegal in? Is it? I think it might be illegal in America. I'm not sure. I know it's definitely illegal in some parts of Europe because you can get it there. I think in France as well. I'm pretty sure I had absinthe in France actually.
You definitely had absinthe in France. It's not French.
Might be actually.
I'm pretty sure it's French.
It looks like French spelling.
It's definitely. I'm pretty sure it's French as well because the French kind of came up with cocktails as a whole. Really.
Yeah.
Like some of the like very first.
Sex à la plage.
For those of you who don't speak French, that was actually probably the best joke on the 6 episodes of the podcast so far. Sex à la plage means sex on the beach. Fantastic.
Great.
I have to say, if I had a hat on, I'd tip it right now because that was pretty funny. But yeah, no, they came up with like kind of the first one. You can still go to. Remember my old manager at a bar I used to work at. When I used to work out in Finiston, he was really into his cocktails. He used to go to a couple of the old school like cocktail bars in France, and they really do it properly. Yeah. What's your favourite cocktail, Josh? Is it a White Russian?
I don't know. I don't know because would you really call a White Russian a cocktail? I guess it is. Yeah.
I wonder what the definition of a cocktail is, because in my opinion, a cocktail is just a cocktail is mixed. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, because I'd say I'm definitely a big fan of White Russian. Me and my dad are a big fan of White Russians. But me personally, I don't really like my alcohol to be sweet. Like I quite like for example, like the wines that I prefer like a red to a white or a rosé because I find them too sweet. Yeah. And it's probably just not growing up with, but just spending maybe far too much time with the notorious pints of fun. In the Glasgow Student Union. They God, it's bloody grim.
If you didn't go to, so me and Josh, I'm current alumni. Josh is about to become alumni of the prestigious University of Glasgow.
No.
And in the University of Glasgow, there's two unions. One of them being the Glasgow University Union, the other being the Queen Margaret's Union. Traditionally, they were single sex. The GUU being male, QMU being female. They're now
good old segregation.
They're now both dual sex. They're open to everyone. For a long time, I did a lot of stuff with the GUU, but they have this drink. It's actually pretty common, I think, across Scotland, and I think you can probably get it in other places. It will have different names everywhere you go. But a pint of fun at the GUU is a double shot of vodka, a VK, which is like a cheap student WKD, topped up with lemonade.
Not to be confused with the Russian Facebook.
Yeah. Niche, Josh, knocking them out of the park today. But yeah, and obviously like VKs or WKDs, they're all like really kind of crazy colours. You'd get like green or red or yellow or blue pints of fun, and they are without a doubt the worst thing for a hangover ever.
Yeah.
I used to drink
them a lot. You get a hangover as soon as you fucking take the first sip.
The issue with them for me was it wasn't even the alcohol content. And I think they're technically illegal. Hear me out, because there's three shots of alcohol in it.
No.
The only place that I can think of off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are others, where you can get 3 shots of alcohol in one drink is Newcastle.
I thought wherever James Bond's drinking.
Yeah. But in Newcastle you can get trebles. They have like trebles bars. Yeah. But you can't get trebles in Scotland. There's very strict drinking laws. But because it's a double shot and then a VK, which also has a shot in, they somehow get away with it. But the thing is not the alcohol; it's the caffeine. There's so much caffeine in a VK that I remember when, like, one night I had in there, maybe had like 10 of these pints of fun.
Yeah.
The next day it wasn't the alcohol; it was like the waking up with like the shakes from all the caffeine and the sugar. Oh god, it was horrible.
That's horrible. Yeah.
It was literally. I felt like that scene in Train Spotting.
Saving Private Ryan.
There was a scene in Train Spotting where he's like curled up on the floor and he's like going cold turkey from the heroin. That's what I felt from all the sugar and caffeine.
Jesus.
Grim, mate. But it says online that a cocktail is defined as an alcoholic drink consisting of a spirit or spirits mixed with other ingredients, such as fruit juice or cream. Or shoes.
No, shoes is what you mix with alcohol.
A shoe?
Yeah, you call alcohol in shoes, I believe. Or at least that's what I've been using. Maybe I'm wrong.
I have never heard that phrase before in my life. Alcohol in shoes?
Yeah, so it's like fizzy drinks or whatever. You put it in with it.
I've never heard that, man.
Yeah.
But what would be... I know you used to like a White Russian. You used to be quite a fan of it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that. I really am. Not so much a fan of the Black Russian. And that's not saying anything. But...
Black Russian for me is just like a slightly zhuzhed up vodka Coke.
Yeah. Oh god. See, the funny thing is, right, I cannot stand full fat Coke strictly because it reminds me of vodka, but I enjoy vodka. It's pretty weird.
But you have this weird thing of drinking neat vodka, which I think is fucking mental.
Yeah, I'm just a hard cunt, I think.
I hate. I'm not really a big fizzy drink person.
I get into a lot of fist fights as well. I can always come home with bloody knuckles.
Yeah, and with the top off.
Yeah.
Speaking Russian, but
I wax my chest a lot.
Yeah, and sit in a lot of saunas. I can't drink.
I beat myself with little small shrubs.
Small shrubs.
That's
not a Russian stereotype, is it? I thought we were going for
whenever they go to those saunas, they always hit themselves with like massive shrubs.
I thought that was a Swedish thing, mate. They also drink
the
Aquafina.
Russians are the descendants of the Scandinavians.
The Slavic people.
Yeah, no, as in like basically all the Vikings came over to Russia and they became the Kievan Rus.
But the Kievan Rus became Finland, did it not? I thought the Russians were the Slavic people that came from like the south and east.
I'm pretty sure the Russian people were Scandinavians that came to... Oh, well, I'm getting my facts.
We're getting all twisted and tangled here right now.
Okay.
Nah, the point being, you like vodka. I don't drink soft drinks, man. I can't... So I work in a restaurant, and people come in and they drink like 3 or sometimes 2 or 3 Cokes with a meal. That for me...
Are you afraid it's a sign of weakness?
No, it's not even a sign of weakness, but that for me is fucking mental. Nobody needs that much sugar. That is unbelievable.
Oh no, it's crazy. Especially with like full fat Coke. Like
full fat Coke
it's like syrup. They use it to clean tar or clean engines or some shit.
It's too much.
Clean pennies.
It coats your teeth.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not being that self-righteous. I have had a fizzy drink, mostly when I'm hungover and you need the sugar. Yeah. But like especially if I was eating a meal, some people come in and they ask for 1 glass, but they ask for 2 bottles of Coke because they know they're going to go through so much Coke. I'm like, you guys are fucking mental. But I can't really do sugary drinks. So even if I was going to have like a mixed drink, on the odd time that I'll have a mixed drink, like say, the one I drink is whiskey and ginger ale. That's my I don't know, easy go-to cocktail, or I have I have a whiskey soda. I drink whiskey soda, which is probably the most old man drink going. It's actually
I'm
really
driving.
nice,
I'll have a whiskey soda, please.
I'll have a soda with a top of whiskey.
So I just parked the Bentley out front. Pour me a glass of whiskey and soda.
But yeah, I don't. I'm a bit like you. I feel like you're a little bit plusher with your tastes, though. You don't like Tennent's.
No, I'm a bit of a snob, I guess.
But you're not. The thing about it is, you're not like.
It just tastes
craft
like water.
lager snobby.
No.
You just like imported beers.
I don't bring those like fancy little vibrating dildo things that you put in beer to try and get the maximum amount of flavour out of it. Have you seen those things?
What? I don't know anyone who's vibro fucking their lagers, but that's probably not far off some of these Leith-based hipsters to what? Is it froth it up or something?
Yeah. It's basically like this kind of like, it's like a little kind of tube that vibrates. You kind of put it in your beer, and it kind of like it's supposed to open up the flavour apparently, and especially like
the aroma.
Yeah.
Where have you seen this? Who has this?
I can't remember where it was. I saw it mentioned one time as well in a.
Was your mum walking around with one of these, and you said, "What's that?"
And I stuck it in my beer, and I was like,
she had to think quick, and she put it in the beer.
Oh no, I don't think so.
Sorry, Lorraine, if you listen to this. That wasn't a dig at you. That was just.
It's a neck massager.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't imagine like how that would work, but.
Can't imagine speaking to my mum.
No. I quite like brash flavours. I can be a bit of a wine snob, actually. I'm a bit of a wine snob, I think.
What kind of red do you like? What kind of...
Depends on my mood, man. I like a lot of different... I like a bit of New World stuff, some old school French. I think there's a lot of French stuff that's very...
What goes best with Ben & Jerry's?
Ben & Jerry's?
Yeah.
Which Ben & Jerry's, though? There's a wide plethora. If you're talking Cherry Garcia, Pinot Noir. You're talking fish food, I'm maybe thinking about a robust Chablis. You know what I mean? Don't come at me like this, Josh. Don't come at me with these Ben and Jerry insults. Don't say you thought about this.
You leave Ben and Jerry out of this.
Mate. Don't even start.
Okay.
But yeah, I like wine. I'm pretty easy with lager.
Yeah.
Although I did try. Tennent's have brought out a new
craft lager.
No, it's a light. Tennent's light.
I thought you can't get any fucking lighter than Tennent's.
That's what I thought. They managed it. The issue being, Josh, that as a beer, as you say...
Is it just fizzy water? Is that what it is?
Hear me out. Tennent's is probably the most, like, nondescript, inoffensive lager I've ever drank. It's probably why it's so popular. Is because, realistically, there's nothing bold or brash about it. It's pretty neutral. It's very drinkable. I like it. If you get it cold and fresh and crisp...
Jimmy Fallon of beers.
But even he's a bit in your face. Or who's the most neutral celebrity ever? Who's the most just accessible, neutral... Maybe David Attenborough. Nobody dislikes him.
And I don't know. Ricky Gervais is very easy to consume now.
No,
that's all. He's very controversial.
Who's like a real do you know Ed Gamble?
Who's he?
You know the guy who does the Off Menu podcast with James Acaster. It doesn't matter. He's a diabetic guy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
don't bring diabetes into this conversation.
It's pretty neutral beer.
Yeah.
But what they've done is they've taken a fairly flavourless beer and made it less flavourless. So as you say,
more flavourless.
It's not far off sparkling water, and weirdly, because it's new, more expensive than a Tennent's.
Does it taste like kind of like sparkling water you've left like in the car for a couple of days?
Do you remember we had this conversation about sparkling water the other day? Yeah. It tastes like if you took the flavour of warm sparkling water and then you cooled it,
and then poured it out of a draft.
So it looks like we're not getting that Tennent sponsorship for the podcast.
I was so hoping that we'd get that.
Oh, mate, it'd be sick, to be fair. Yeah. I would love that. But you wouldn't, obviously, because you don't like Tennent.
No, they wouldn't like me, so...
It would be cool if they sent us like a crate every time we did the podcast. We just drank Tennent's and talked about... drank Tennent's and talked about Tennent's on the podcast.
Well, we need to start speaking to these vignerons.
Yeah, maybe try and get a wine sponsorship. Yeah. It'd be a bit more difficult. I don't really think it matches our user base. But yeah, But cocktails wise, so you like a White Russian?
I like.
I like an old fashioned.
Yeah, I do like an old fashioned. Actually, to be fair, anything I've originally I was quite against having eggs in my drink, but I've grown used to it. Actually, I quite like the
sours.
Yeah, sours. I quite like
love
the
sours.
the texture that it gives.
I make quite a good amaretto sours actually.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I really enjoyed my time working in a bar. I only worked there for about 6 months. It was quite fun. And then if you really knew what you were doing, you get really into it. Yeah. I remember, you remember my mate Callum Neely? He's a incredibly accomplished mixologist. I do him the credit of calling him a mixologist.
I did a mixology course.
You did? Yeah. And where did that get you?
It took me to Tesco's.
But yeah, he told me one time he wanted to infuse. It was competition, right? Yeah. And I'm in the restaurant world at the moment, not really the bar world. And it's something that happens a lot in the bar world, where basically, pardon me, just a little bit, but
you fucking leave that out of the podcast.
Yeah, sorry.
You do that in your own time.
Do that in my own time. Yeah, this time means money. But a spirit will come to an area and say, look, we've got a new spirit, or we've got an old spirit. Casper the friendly vodka. And we're gonna
trademark that name. Don't steal that.
Yeah, that's our next sponsor. But yeah. Anyway, they'll come in and they'll say to a load of quite accomplished bartenders and mixologists, look, we want you to make the best cocktail you can out of this product. We'll have a competition. Whoever wins it will maybe be able to travel around the world making the cocktail for people on the promo show, on the PR tour. So he did this one with this whiskey, and he wanted to infuse it with rosemary. But the way he did it, which just sounds so insane to me, was he infused it with this old school 19th century French way, French perfumery technique.
Running it through a sock?
No, basically you get animal fat.
Okay.
And you spread, I think it works best with pig fat because it has a high something content. I don't know. Let's call it something. Yeah. So you spread the animal fat, and it was rose. It wasn't rosemary, it was rose. Closer. Okay. And he put rose petals into the animal fat and then compressed it so that the rose petals infused into the animal fat. Then you put the animal fat into the whiskey, so the whiskey soaks through the animal fat, and then he strained the whiskey out, and it had a rose flavour. And I was like...
Wait, was the rose mixed in with the fat, or was it?
Yeah, I just said that. So you spread the fat out, put rose petals and stuff on the fat, compressed the fat so the rose petal flavour went into the fat, put the fat in the whiskey, strained the fat out of the whiskey. Now the whiskey has the flavour of the rose.
I prefer my wine diet or whiskey diet.
Yeah, and I said, I'll just have a pint, mate.
Oh, that's disgusting.
It's not disgusting.
Well, no, I guess, yeah. No, there's a lot of things that taste bloody amazing that go through quite nasty processes.
Do you know what's quite funny? I was listening to the James Acaster and Ed Gamble. It's called Off Menu podcast.
Yeah.
And they get people on. They ask them favorite style mate. It's they talk about food basically. And they had on the other day this guy called Noah Schmutz, I think his name is. He's the guy who plays...
You got Will. A little schmutz.
Yeah. He's the guy who plays Will in Stranger Things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
No. Banging, what's her face? Bobby Brown?
Is he with Billy Moore?
No, in the show.
Oh, I haven't seen the third series.
Have you not?
Nah. Okay. I kind of lost interest after the second one.
Oh, I think it's great. It's really, really good.
It's got high production value. I want that.
It's a good show.
Yeah, I'm bored of it. Okay. But anyway... They got him on, and they were explaining to him British food, and they explained to him. They originally talked about Marmite, and he was like, "What is Marmite?" And they were
like this podcast. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, exactly. And they were explaining it to him, and he was like, "I don't understand why you would create a product that half the people hate." And they were like, oh, you know, it's a British thing. And then he was like, oh, do you have any other weird foods? So then he told them about haggis.
Haggis is great. Come on.
And black pudding.
Black pudding's amazing.
They're both lovely, but to this American guy's credit, he said, what's in haggis? And they said, oh, so it's like lamb and cow intestines mixed with oats put inside the stomach of a cow and then boiled. And he was like, that sounds fucking gross, which it does.
Well, he likes fucking chicken nuggets, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then he was like, what's black pudding? And he was like, oh, it's congealed pig's blood.
Ooh, God, that makes me want some black pudding.
Yeah, it's quite tasty though, isn't it?
Put a bit of vinegar on top of it.
So yeah, I think we've touched on some like quite difficult things this evening.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously to do with like the trial and everything that's going on with Harvey Weinstein, and obviously there's going to be another trial, I think in March in Los Angeles, where 12 women are bringing cases against him.
Yeah.
But also in the juxtaposition that there's everything that happened with Caroline Flack, and kind of the realization that there's a lot of bad in the world, but equally there is good as well.
Indeed.
We need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Try and promote it where we see it.
Live for the good moments.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also we've talked a little bit about how, you know, we need to look at the complete person as well as just...
Rather than focusing on one specific kind of thing someone has done and judging them for it. Yeah.
And taking things in singular actions.
Yeah.
And so probably, I guess, maybe a little thing we would ask you to do if you listen this far into the podcast is next time you go to kind of judge someone, and this is not really necessarily taking direct influence from what we've talked about with Weinstein and Flack, but just in general, next time you're going to judge someone, trying to be a bit more empathetic.
Yeah, try and put yourself in their shoes and try and...
Yeah, because obviously with Weinstein there was a pattern of behaviour.
Yeah.
And with Flack there were things that were wrong, but ultimately these people are human and we need to give them the due diligence, really. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, cheers guys.
Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.
See you again.
We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for listening, guys. For all the latest news about the podcast, find us at RTTW Josh and Darragh on Instagram. Bye. Bye.